4, 3, 2. All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another office hours here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie. And as always, I'm super excited to roll into the next half hour that we have with you all. You're going to see that time is going to fly by super quickly. So I just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules so that we can be comfortable and confident in this next 30 minutes here and these next 30 minutes. So I see we've got folks turning their cameras on. I'm just going to officially extend the invitation. We believe in visibility here at Power to Fly. Would love to invite you all to turn your cameras on if you are in a safe place to do that. If you haven't showered today, it doesn't matter. If your place is a mess, put your virtual backgrounds on or leave your place a mess. Let your cats make a cameo and walk across the computer screen. It doesn't matter. We want to bring the humanity to these virtual experiences. So there's your invitation. Feel free to turn your cameras on whenever you feel called to do so. I've muted everyone upon entrance just to avoid any background noise, but I can't stress enough, we want to hear from you in the next half hour. So if you have something to share, a reflection, a dream you had last night, any of your own tips and tricks that you find helpful, feel free to hop off mute, or you can write in the chat box and let us know there. I will flag that to our guest speaker. If anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can just find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie. You can write to me privately and I will raise your question or your reflection to our guest speaker, keeping you anonymous there. And then the last thing I'll say is we'd love for you to follow us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store. I'm just going to briefly give a shout out for those of you who have already gotten the chat box on fire here, writing where you're calling from in the world, so that we can see, the power of digital community here. And so also our guest speaker can keep this in mind as she's diving into these questions. So our guest speaker is calling from New Jersey. I'm calling from Argentina and Patagonia. We've got Washington, D.C. on the line, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Arizona, Kansas, New York, San Jose, California, New Jersey. Great. So if you're just joining us, go ahead and write in the chat box. Let us know where you're calling from. And for now, I'm going to shut my mouth and pass the mic to our guest speaker, who I know is going to drop a lot of knowledge today. Helen, let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Absolutely. I myself, thank you very much. And I would like to welcome everyone who has taken the time to join us. I don't want to take a lot of our time because it does go very quickly, but just a little of my background. I have been in recruiting and staffing for 35 to 40 years. I've managed, I've recruited, touched on most of it in financial and hospitality and pharmaceutical industries. I have both done research on age discrimination in the workplace in my education, as well as being the recipient of age discrimination in the workplace. So I decided to just go out on my own some time ago, and I've been doing that under the name Tanagi, which I have a website as Tanagi.com that you can find. I work with women on their career paths, on returning to the workplace, on finding their dream goals, of finding what their path is, whatever they need. I do some coaching, quite a bit of coaching, some counseling, helping develop resumes, helping with interview skills because they get rusty as well. So I love working with women over 40. That is my niche, and that's what I decided to pursue. I'm passionate about it, and I would be happy to answer questions for all of you.
Awesome. And so speaking of, you all have submitted some great questions previous to this chat. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so I can get the questions pulled up. If you hear your question come up, we would love to hear from you if you're joining us live. So just let us know that this was your question. And if this is not your question, we would still love to hear from you. If this resonates, if you have anything else that you'd like to add on to the question or anything to share, please feel free to hop off mute or write in the chat box. So let's start off with this first question here. As a woman in my early 60s, what industries and positions offer greater opportunity and a more welcoming environment for seniors?
Well, I think that there are some evident industries that do not. The tech industry and advertising, marketing are geared on the younger side. I think that if you look at financial, healthcare, hospitality, and insurance, those are probably welcoming. But the best way to identify them is to do some research There are companies that do what we call returnships, which are internships for seniors. And they're geared toward people who are coming back into the workplace. But if you're currently working and looking for another opportunity, then you can use that information to identify the firms that have these returnship programs. Because obviously, if they have these returnship programs, they embrace the experience and maturity that you bring to the table. So those firms specifically would be ideal targets. But as I mentioned, the industries that I mentioned, such as insurance and hospitality, financial, even pharmaceutical, they're all less discriminating on age than, for example, tech. I think technology has the lowest average age of any industry. So that's an indication that it's tough to crack that nut.
And what are some of the taboos that you can speak to about that? Like obviously the taboo. I mean, we can talk. We can crack that big pile of worms open, but we won't because we only have 30 minutes. But just to highlight the taboos, of entering the field of technology or the industry of technology, and it's always this, innovative space, and that means it calls for X amount of person, which I think it can be the person that is available and willing to be innovative in that space, not limiting to age, sex, gender, all those things. What can keep folks confident that they still have a place in this industry, regardless of their age? Because of course, one of the things we talk about here often is career pivoting, for example. So one of the most beautiful things that I find is someone that has like an art major, let's say, or was a teacher, now is a developer. They make this big transition, and that makes diversity of thought be one of the big pillars that could lead technology. Can you just speak a little bit to that? What is something to remember, that this is a space for everyone?
Absolutely. But what you would need to do, you need to update your training. You would always have to stay current on training. If you're in that industry and over 40 and struggling to find a new spot, you need to just keep updated and current on what's current in any industry. It applies to any industry you go into. You have to know what's current in that industry, what generally is being used in that industry, and familiarize yourself. There's a lot of online training that's available. I know Power to Fly offers a lot of options as far as the technology industry. So I think you have to keep yourself up to date, keep yourself abreast of what's going on. You have to possibly become involved in professional organizations, attend conferences, even virtual conferences, in the industry that you're trying to target. Those are all important, no matter what industry you're going into. Really, from my perspective, I personally think that there is no deterrent and there is no bigger hurdle in any one industry as opposed to another. I think that if you do your research, if you prepare yourself, if you present yourself properly today, which I mean formatting your resume properly, keeping yourself very confident and what you bring to the table. Finding a job today in, again, any industry requires a lot of research, a lot of work, a lot of lists, probably lists of networking that you can do, list of companies, again, researching and finding companies that are doing internships. And some of those are tech companies. Keeping those lists and knowing where to look, and then taking that information and using it to build your networks, to drill down to the industry, who's in the industry, who's talking, who's doing podcasts, who's doing blogs, where can I find that information? So it requires a lot of work and a lot of research to really, for anyone. I mean, statistics show 60 to 70% of jobs are found through networking, not through, honestly, Indeed or Career Builder or that. Those are the exceptions and fortunate people who go onto those sites and then find their role. But networking is the key, and it's very important. And again, it does take a lot of work. If you're currently working, you need to dedicate time to it. You need to set it on your calendar. You need to see what you can do to expand your networks. Your networks always need to include more than family and friends are almost not even a place to start. Professional associates, alumni from your school, people that you've worked with in the past. And then from that, you grow out to identifying, you can drill down on LinkedIn, identifying people in the industry that you're interested in, identifying people that you can indeed reach out and make a connection to and build from that. I heard someone speaking who had gotten was interested in a role at Amazon, had drilled down on LinkedIn, found a connection, reached out to them for an exploratory meeting with them, presented their background, asked them for assistance in any way they could provide. They introduced them to someone else in the company that they met with, didn't realize at the time that it was a VP, and wound up getting a job with the company. So it does take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of research, but I think that you can be successful in any field.
Thank you for demystifying that. And so with that said, I'm going to move on to this next question here. I'm 65 and want to work for as long as I can. I'm an expert at what I do, but I'm getting vetted out because I'm not a culture fit. I want to own my age. I have no reason to be ashamed. How can I bring value and monetize my experience?
I think that, again, and not to beat on this constantly, but I agree with you that you should own your age. I agree that certainly I'm someone that is very happy to own my age, but you shouldn't make it easy for interviewers to judge you based on that age prior to convincing them and explaining to them what your value is. Because unfortunately, people do make judgments prematurely before it's something that should be done. So I agree with you. I mean, I worked into my 60s, and actually when I left was asked to come back. So there's jobs out there, not to say it's not difficult. It is difficult. Again, it's a lot of research, a lot of work today, but you should be able to develop opportunities. I'm not sure when you say you're not a quote unquote culture fit, exactly what you mean, but you do need to pay attention to, depending on the industry you're going into, depending on what you do in your research and finding out about that industry, what is that culture of the industry? And then you do need to conform to some extent to that culture. The fact of the matter is that from the time that you either meet someone on Zoom or meet them in person, you're going to be judged. So not allowing them to judge you on anything that is not evident, that's not on the table, is to your advantage. What you need to do also is you need to look at whatever company you're interested in. You need to do some research and find out what are they doing, what are their projects, what are their plans, and then you need to take your experience and apply it directly to what they're doing. You need to be able to sit in an interview, and you need to be able to respond to questions, showing them specifically how your experience applies to what they want to do, how you can bring to the table existing experience and lower the learning curve and evaluate their processes, manage their projects, or join a team on their project. You need to understand their culture and them, and then apply your background to it. That's really the way you'll be successful.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for that, Helen. Let's move on to this next question here. What's the best way to market all my transferable skills related to the role without giving away my age?
Well, your resume should, number one, be formatted the way they're formatted today, which means that there's no objectives, there's summaries, there's LinkedIn URLs, usually email address, phone number, no street address in the title. Then you can put your relevant skills and your experience. Your experience should not go back more than 10 or 15 years if possible. I know in some instances you have a job longer than that. So then you need to work with that. But what you need to look at is, what are your transferable skills? Did you lead any teams? Did you lead any projects? Even if you were volunteering, did you create a team as a volunteer that had to achieve something? Did you manage a calendar as a volunteer or in a position? Did you plan events? Did you influence others? These are all transferable skills. So you need to sit down and evaluate what you've done and what the skills that apply to those achievements are. And then you can put, again, a section on after your summary, your professional summary, you have a section of relevant skills, and you can list those, what you should be doing. Again, and this is where there's a lot of work involved in finding a job today. You should be looking at job descriptions that you're interested in the industry you're interested in the role you're interested in. You should be looking at what they're, and you can look anywhere in the country, it doesn't matter. Just to get a sense of what it is they're looking for, what's successful in the role that you want. And then you need to look at the wording, the keywords that they use in those job descriptions. And then you need to make your transferable skills meet what they're looking for to some extent. I mean, saying team management, maybe they place it a different way as leadership. So you need to try and use the words that they're using, as long as you have those skills. That's the important part. But you do have to evaluate, you have to read job descriptions. You have to, once you identify also what, and you've created that resume with relevant skills, you can again identify companies that or roles that you're interested in. Do that drill down search on LinkedIn, find people in that role or in that company, and reach out and ask them if you could have a 15-minute coffee clutch with them on Zoom, and just get their input on what made you successful in this role, what allowed you to get into this company. Ask them for their expertise, and then use that information for your benefit.
Yeah, connecting the dots, making it less work for the hiring manager, and also seeing yourself from different perspectives as well. I think that's a great exercise that seems to come up throughout, these questions of, okay, how do I, show my transferable skills, especially if I'm career pivoting or if I've taken a break from the workforce. Like, how can I make it easy for them to digest and say, yeah, this person is, a great candidate to consider. So I love the tips and tricks that you're raising right now.
I mean, all of us forget everything we've done. When I used to recruit, I used to tell people, when I start a job, keep a journal, because you'll never remember at the end everything you've done, and you'll have done a lot, and you'll have achieved a lot. And so you really need to sit down and with a piece of paper and just focus on, what have I done and what skills did I have to use doing it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here. Do we have any alternatives to search for jobs other than going on job boards and LinkedIn?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, 60 to 70%, and actually the percentage is higher, over 50, of jobs are found through networking. They're jobs that often aren't ever posted for whatever reason, whether there's someone leaving and they haven't had a chance to post it yet. But the key is, beyond the job boards, certainly they're important to have your resume there, your profile there, keep aware of what's coming in and do your applications. But the key is really networking, and networking, again, from the perspective of finding the companies or the roles. If you know the industry or the roles or the companies that you're interested in, that's half the battle. And then spending a lot of time on LinkedIn, connecting to people in those roles and in those companies, and just saying you do a little homework, find out, drill down to them, look at their profile. Did they go to the same school as you? That's always a common ground. If not, did they do any podcasts or blogs? Because people love to be flattered. So being able to reach out and say, I read your blog and I am so passionate about that particular topic. Would you have 15 minutes for me to just really get your feedback? That would be so great for me, and I would greatly appreciate it. So that's the way you approach them and how you drill down. But really, going on job boards, Indeed and such, can be very frustrating, and you need a lot of patience. But networking is the key, and I know also that Power to Fly does a lot of events where you can do networking, and it's great. There's just nothing that compares with that one-on-one connection.
Absolutely. And one thing that I love to do on these chats as I moderate, I like to put some of these things into practice. So since we're all here because we're clearly interested in the same topic, why not put this networking skill to use now? So if anyone wants to share their LinkedIn or, their preferred way of connecting, please drop that in the chat box. And I extend the invitation for the folks who are online with us now. Maybe reach out to one or two of these people and start to network starting now, using this virtual event as a starting point. So feel free to do that. I will also drop mine there to just, get it warmed up and to practice what I preach as well. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And we've got just about 9 minutes left. So I do want to get to this private question that someone sent to me a little earlier on. This is a question and reflection up for discussion. So with renewed emphasis on diversity and inclusion, why are the discussions around women re-entering and or leaving the workplace focused on parents? Children aren't the only reason women take a leave of absence from work. It can be for personal health reasons, as well as for caring for aging parents, et cetera. And this is particularly difficult for a single person, male or female, living on one income. Even LinkedIn's new category missed the mark on this, deferring only to parents. Flexible hybrid work needs to be available to everyone, not just managers and parents, and it generally falls on single and or childless coworkers who end up picking up slack when there are last-minute fire drills. Post-pandemic, we have a unique opportunity to expand this dialogue and make it more inclusive. So more of a piece, food for thought, reflection. Would love to see if you have any comments on that, Helen.
Well, I agree with you that unfortunately things are picked up by companies, by options such as LinkedIn, and once that happens, then it becomes the norm, the conversation. But I personally was a caregiver, so I understand completely what you're saying. That it's not just parenting, but I think that. It's really, unfortunately, a case of re-education when you talk to someone about those other options that are created by just life in general. So I think that there's a lot of movement in the job market right now. There's a lot of people that were waiting that are now moving. There's a lot of opportunity because obviously things are picking up. So, and I think there's a lot more remote opportunity than there used to be. I actually managed a remote team for 13 years before, and people would go, "How do you do that?" But today it's a little bit more accepted by a lot of companies. But I absolutely agree that that's the focus, right or wrong. And so I think you need to always address your personal situation the best way that you can without necessarily giving someone your private life, but with having them understand what your situation is. But you also need to take advantage of any doors that open because of other opportunities that are created just based on what the media has kind of lit into. So, yeah.
Yes, I there's so much room to grow there. I definitely agree with this person who submitted that question anonymously. Helen, I agree with you as well. We got a lot of work to do. And actually, I think it's interesting that this is even a topic that is considered to be, relevant and important when historically speaking, it hasn't been, if you've taken a break from work to do whatever, to go travel, to just take a break, to raise family, to take care of elderly, you historically speaking, you had to check that at the door. It was kind of a taboo to bring it up. So we definitely have a long road ahead of us. So thank you for being interested in cracking that open. And
yeah, I think too, as a one of my majors being women and gender studies, from the perspective of women, this is what it gravitates to, that it's used as well. They can't do as much, or they can't do this, or they can't do. It's an excuse. And so that's the way it's usually utilized. And as whether you're a caregiver or a parent or whatever brought you away from your work, this is the way it's approached with women. That of course women can't, because they have those other responsibilities that are far more important. Not, but yeah.
Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes, and I feel like, I mean, I would just love to keep you on longer, but unfortunately, we have to respect the time here. And let's move on to this question that I know that a lot of folks are wondering about. If this is your question again, we would love to hear from you. How can we determine if ageism is why we aren't getting hired?
That is
The
very, very,
golden question.
it's, I absolutely wish I could give you the golden answer. But again, when I was discriminated against based on age, I spoke with a lawyer, and it's so difficult. Like, the law is there, but the law is lame, because the burden falls on the employee or the candidate. And companies are very smart today. I mean, I worked for a man who said to all his managers, I don't care what you say to your people, but don't put it on paper where it's going to court. And so that's the mindset. If I can do it without you knowing I'm doing it, I'm going to do it. So, and the law doesn't allow for that. The law only allows if you have good documentation. So, for example, if you see a job description that says they want management experience and they want 5 years of this, or not even 5 years, but they want extensive customer service and so on, and then they say, but only 1 or 2 years experience. Well, that's kind of the code for, we want someone younger. So, in my life, I happen to be a very kind of cut off your nose to spite your face. So that would make me want to go talk to them and make them understand. No, you don't really. But that's the way they are. They just, they have the ability to do it underhanded. But again, not giving them the opportunity by formatting your resume up to date, by presenting yourself. I mean, I spoke with someone who said that they were judged carrying a handbag because young women today don't. They carry their phone, or they maybe carry a little wallet, but they never carry a handbag. So all of a sudden that was a mark. Okay, you must be old, you have a handbag. But you have to be aware of how you're presenting yourself. When you sit in a seat, sit back, don't sit forward, because sitting forward, again, lack of confidence, or you're not young and carefree. So all of those things, unfortunately, contribute to them making judgments and making assumptions. And so without them saying point blank, I'm not hiring you because you're too old, it's kind of hard to do anything about it.
Yeah, and we have a comment here from Rachel. I interviewed for an exec role and they hired a person 10 years my junior. It's so common in high tech to hire millennials with less experience.
Yes, and some of that is due to dollars. They sometimes can get people for less money, and sometimes it's just the culture. That culture word.
And this question here, why isn't our age discrimination law being enforced? Do you have any insight to that, or any ways we can, propel it to actually work?
Again, it's because the law is passed, and the law says that you can't be discriminated against, but the law also says that you must provide specific documentation to prove. And there are some people who have many people who have won cases where you might have a supervisor who's foolish enough to document it or to say it, but being passed over for training or passed over for a promotion, if a company can say, well, we found someone that was more experienced, that the age didn't matter, then you're not able to. They tie your hands, because it's very, very difficult for you to do the due diligence of proving it. That's the key. Sadly.
And yes, and I feel like you have much more insight to share. So please remind us where we can be in touch with you, because we will be ending in about a minute and a half here. So please give us some food for thought to just, ponder on, and to keep us encouraged as we finish this conversation, and then remind us how we can connect with you when we finish.
Well, as I said, the job market is busy. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of people who waited and now are moving. So those jobs are open. So you should not get discouraged. You should just do a little bit of self-examination. Again, for example, record yourself on your phone. See how you present yourself. Do you present yourself confidently? Because every one of you brings enormous value. And you need to know that, and you need to bring it to the table, and you need to be able to respond to questions about specifics about what you've done. How did you manage that team? How did you finish that project? Specifics, and make sure you're basically practice, practice, practice for the interview. So those are important, and looking at how you're presenting yourself and not giving them the opportunity to make judgments. Those are all very important. You can get a hold of me through my website, which is Tanagui, TANAGUI.com. And I'm more than happy to answer questions that we didn't cover today, or you can set up a meeting with me just to chat. If you want to do that, there's a consultation option there. And so whatever you need, let me know. But yeah, it's just, there is activity out there. It's just that finding a job today, I think, takes a lot more work than maybe, well, when I was younger. And some of you, it takes more work, more research, more ability to be very proactive. And if you have a job and you're looking for a job, it's difficult, but you need to set aside that time if you want to reach your goal.
Well said, beautifully said to end this conversation here. We've dropped the link to her website here in the chat box, so make sure you access that. I love that folks are writing their LinkedIn, dropping their LinkedIns in the chat box as well. Make sure you reach out to folks. I will now be ending this conversation. Helen, thank you so much for joining us, taking the time out of your busy schedule to drop knowledge and to reflect with us as well. And just to, echo Helen's food for thought, we all bring value. So just let's be confident in that, and let's encourage each other to do the best we can. So enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thank you, Helen.
Yes, thank you all. Thank